So thank you for joining us. What Rhiannon and I, one of our core values is really about community and just really supporting people in wherever they are in their business strategies, in their personal lives, and just trying to always be good citizens and leading forward. And so as this new world has just changed on a daily, weekly basis, we thought that the best way to try to mitigate that for people was to come together. And yes, there's a lot of people doing it, but what we were hearing and seeing and feeling was, what we started on Tuesday was very much just personal, right? How are you coping? What are you doing to, if you have small children, what are you doing if, for yourself to take care of your own loved ones, but more importantly, what does that look like? And then there started to be a little bit of innovation around business, but today was very much about immediate needs, right? What am I do as the leader of my company? What do I do as an employee? What do I need to know about my financial commitments, and how does that work? And so we really felt that it was so important to try to get some of those immediate answers together. And we asked some of the people that we know and trust and that work closely with us and guide us to jump on it and be part of this conversation. So I want to introduce Heidi Groshelle, Groshelle Communications. Heidi is our publicist and PR, but she is worked in a variety of environments and in crisis management in the tech world and in the cannabis world and other businesses. And so we thought it was really valuable to have Heidi come on and just tell us some basic etiquette and thoughts around how we communicate outward to our clients and customers, and what we should be thinking about with that for now, and then maybe some tips, going forward. And then Julie Chendes and I have known each other, God, it seems like a number of years now, but she is one of my go-to authorities in the world of HR. And it's not just about, hey, how do I write the best training program? But more importantly, again, very foundational for the leadership of understanding, how do I make this okay? What do I need to be thinking about? How do I communicate to them? What are the things that I need to make sure that they get from I as an employer, so that they can go out and get whatever resources they need. In addition to the fact that this is a very unusual, to have everything closed down with the exception of takeout in the food service world or groceries, convenience stores. What does that look like in the short term and long term? So there's some, she's very knowledgeable about the food and beverage industry, and so we'll be looking forward to that. And I'm hoping that our other two advisors will be coming on as well. And so just ahead of them joining, but Brian.marblestone is with ABD Insurance. He has been working side by side with us for a number of years when we set up our business, but he has been fielding a lot of calls like many other business insurance companies about, how do I track my losses? Am I covered by any of this? What happens, where does the state, local government resources kick in? Where do I have to do, what do I need to do to track some of that information and in the financial part? And then Kelly Carroll comes from the business lending side. But again, these are very important questions today about when my business is closed, when I have no income, when I've had to let all my employees go, what comes next from that? And these are the parts that get a little dicey in understanding what I need to do now, especially because there's so much anxiety around, hey, can I pay my rent? Can I pay my car payment? Let alone a lease on a building, equipment, et cetera. So I'm hoping that we can get them back into the call here shortly. So that is the introduction. And I know that Brian had a hard stop at 11 and we were gonna let him go first, but since he's not back on this call yet, and I don't know if I still need to get out of this and get get those other ones back in. But I will turn this over to Heidi to start with.
Well, thank you for having me. This is a very unusual time, as we all know. And the reason I say that is because I've been working in the world of public relations and communications since the 1970s. And I've never seen a time when communications is more important and needs to be handled in a very delicate way. I've had clients come to me now and say, should we launch a new product? Should we reach out to our customers? Should we talk to our team? How do we do all that? Communications needs to touch on every aspect of the human beings that you engage with. So what does that mean, really? All right, you have a team who's all working from home. They're not used to it. What do? How do you engage them? How do you keep them as a team when they're used to sitting across a table or seeing one another? What type of communication tools you're going to use to do that? How do you communicate to the reporters and the writers and the editors and bloggers and all the people who are in the media who communicate to the world when they too are dealing with all of the same issues that we are? They're also concerned with their jobs, and sadly there have been an enormous number of layoffs this week of journalists based on the fact that media are struggling to stay alive in their own right. It's always been a challenge to run a newspaper or a magazine or a blog to make any money, and it's impacting these people deeply. And then how do you respond to your clientele when they say, but we can't go dark, we've got to keep talking? And there are new ways to embrace that. CEO videos, different ways that you can write blogs about the business. There are so many tactics and strategies to use, and I think that once we begin this discussion, we'll touch on a lot of that. But my intro really is that one must be very careful today in how you communicate. I think that timing is of the essence, and yet you don't want to barrage people with your thoughts and feelings and communications. You need to be very strategic still and very sensitive. Do you want to say that good? Would you like to have more? I'm just going off of what I'm thinking and feeling inside.
I think that's a great start for today, Heidi. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Kelly is on, but it seems like she's in a permanent muted state. Oh, Kelly, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you so much, you guys. So I want to first thank Trace Trust for putting this on and getting you guys all together. So I want you guys to know that as a business owner, you're not alone, right? The government is supporting us, small businesses. So if you have a lender or anybody who can forward you information, we're Diamond Business Loans, that's the firm that I'm working with. We do business finance. We're a part of the Hollywood Chamber, Beverly Hills Chamber of Commerce, and they're constantly forwarding us updates in regards to what's going on, right? So right now, there's tons of business resources out there that are offering pretty much a relief disaster program. Like I said, they're really catering to help small businesses stay afloat, offer resources, and really just help everybody, you know, through this time. Again, they even offer business advisors where you can just literally click on a link and you'll get to talk to somebody. There's tons of loan programs through your financial institutions. Everybody should know about that. And really from start to finish, A to Z on how you talk to your employees, keep everybody calm. As you know, if you're listening to the news, you're getting a lot of information that can be scary. But again, the government is sending out pretty much day-to-day updates. Now, when we speak about SBA lending, you know, everybody, if anybody knows that term, it can be a little tedious, right? Very doc intensive. We do offer what's called bridge lending. If you're looking to fund in a couple of weeks where you don't have time to go through the process and wait for 30, 60 days, there is bridge financing where you can close in a week or two, get you over that hurdle for working capital, paying your employees. If we're speaking to the cannabis related businesses, right, this government funding is obviously not going to be extended to you. So what you're going to want to do is find a lender that can help fund these type of businesses. It doesn't, unfortunately, institutions are even shutting the door when it comes to ancillary businesses, right? Even if you're not plant touching, which means cannabis and hemp, and you're not actually manufacturing, lighting, greenhouses, all that kind of stuff. Like I said, it's ancillary to actual plant touching, are still being shunned away from institutional banks. So you're going to want to, again, find a lender who has open doors to finding that financing for you. And more or less, we also act as a resource to help guide you in the banking situation and really anything and everything from A to Z as far as banking and finance.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Brian, did you get on the call?
I am on the call. Thanks.
All right, Brian, we'll turn over to you.
Great. So I, have thanks for everybody to hop on, and thanks for Trace Trust for organizing. Wish I had, a little bit better news to share from the insurance standpoint. There's the term, the most familiar term that everybody's wanting to understand is the status of business interruption claims. I think that's that, along with workers' compensation, are kind of the two hot topics as it relates to this epidemic that we've got going on, and that it's something that's being closely watched by not only ABD and our entire team, but by the rest of the industry, because as it stands right now, there are ISO forms, which are basically standard, insurance standard office that back a couple of years back, I think in the early 2000s, they came out with an exclusion specifically surrounding, bacteria or airborne illnesses. And that exclusion is what a lot of insurers are looking back towards when we're starting to see claims for business interruption due to shutdown of society, basically, while we try to get this to flatten the curve. And that is the stance of basically every insurance carrier that I've interacted with, and that the industry standard is that, for a business interruption loss to actually be covered, you need to sustain direct physical damage to your location for the business interruption, or which is also a property, it's a property coverage. So you need to have direct physical damage to your physical location for that property or business income coverage to kick in. And
Hey, Brian,
now,
real quick question around that, because I'm just thinking back to, I've worked with so many businesses here in the Bay Area for a long time, and I definitely know that there's been times, during natural disaster or construction areas that shut down, the storefront, the street in front of them, that did kick in. And so is this not, because it's just so unknown, not covered, or in the regular interruption of business? Is that because it's not considered? I mean, it just feels strange because it's so mandatory that there might be some consideration, or are they starting to even explore that conversation?
It's a great point you make there, Merril. So the order that you're speaking of would be a civil order or civil authority shutdown, and that's that there are, depending on everybody's policies differently, but just broadly speaking, that civil order shutdown is kind of how do you say it? It doesn't apply based on a lot of the virus and bacteria exclusions that are also in there, most policies. But as you alluded to, there are things going on in the courts right now. There are multiple different suits throughout different states in New Jersey and New Orleans, where restaurants and other types of businesses have basically sued their insurance carrier, saying you must pay out this business income loss irrespective of any exclusions that you might be leaning on to deny the claim. And that's kind of similar to what we saw after a 9/11, where there is now what's called the Terrorism Risk Insurance Act, where every carrier is mandated to offer coverage for acts of terrorism. So we are keeping an eye on, we may see something develop where there is a mandate for carriers to pay business interruption claims, but it's going to be a hardly fought battle. And, based on we got an expert opinion from a litigation attorney who battles for clients who've had their claims denied. And he said at this moment, before getting a potential client to pay him a bunch of money to take an insurance company to court over a business interruption loss, absent of physical damage to the actual property that they operate, he would be advising them that the chances of him winning this case at this juncture are very slim. And, he wouldn't take on those cases without an express understanding that this is more of a uphill battle than one might expect. So that's, like I said, it's not the best news, but that's how the industry stands. And, we're at ABD, we're fighting for our clients where a business interruption might apply. Kind of don't want to get in too much of the weeds, but some of the argument might be that, you have a contaminated surface in your property, and that would then be considered physical damage to your property, and then business interruption would be eligible to be paid. So a lot of different arguments going around right now, but as generally speaking, as it stands, the business interruption coverage is not kicking in immediately for insureds, unfortunately.
Brian, do you think that it's possible that at the federal level, now that some federal disaster levels have been kicked in, that there might be a federal program available similar to the SBA program? I know when FEMA comes through, after a natural disaster, there's a lot of business continuity relief there. Is that something that we should be, pushing our electeds to pursue for us?
I think definitely there's a couple of things that are going to benefit businesses. I think obviously the current administration in their relief efforts have listed a number of things that would be beneficial for businesses, whether it's delaying tax due dates. There's a lot of breaks in there in terms of employer payroll tax waiving and a variety of different. This government obviously is very pro-business. So in addition to their kind of float package, there are many different things that will be helpful to a business. I think there is some talk of a federal-backed business interruption type, where the carriers work in conjunction with the federal government to pay business interruption claims. But that talk is coming more from insureds than it is insurance companies. I will tell you that the insurance companies themselves are not confident that they would be able to sustain their balance sheets along with paying business interruption to basically every business in all of California now, and all the places that are shut down now and will be shut down most likely in the future. So I think the relief effort will definitely be compounded or be, you're probably going to have more coming from the government than you will from your insurance companies at this point. So yes, push those elected officials to do whatever they can to push the envelope in their direction.
That might be a good point then. Kelly, are you hearing anything that you want to add to this on the finance side? Did we lose her?
Carol, I'm sorry, I missed that last little bit of it.
The question was, to what Brian was just talking about with federal and local relief, and right now the insurance kind of being in flux on that. But are you, is there anything you have to add or that you're hearing on your side on the financial relief that might also assist us in this conversation?
Absolutely, yeah. So when I first spoke, the government is extremely supportive in this venture, or what we're.
You cut out a little bit.
Yeah, Kelly's connection is not strong.
Can you hear me?
There you are, you're back.
Okay,
You're
cool.
back.
Can you hear me? It's good?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll share the link. There's a bunch of different resources that the business owners can reach out to. Like I said, there's an actual disaster relief. It's an SBA product. My actual boss went on it just to kind of go through and speak to it. It's a little tedious, right? There's a lot of documentation. It takes about a half an hour to complete the application. But if you guys don't want to go in, or the business owners don't want to go in right away on their own, they can just reach out to their lender, because we're all informed of it and we know how to speak to kind of what they're going to be getting into and what they're supposed to expect. And again, they're not just offering the actual loan programs, they're offering advisories, they're offering, different tools in order to keep your teams comfortable. They're also, you guys, for employees and everything, if you want to mention dealerships, there's cell phone companies, everybody, gas companies, they're all giving a little bit of relief in regards to payments that are being made to these services. If your employees or yourself is having a hard time making payments at this time, they're offering a deferral on some of those payments. So again, just all those speaking points we want to pass down to our teams and our employees.
Great. At this time, let's open up Julie to kind of connect all of these pieces for the human side.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Great.
So we've been busier than we've ever been in the history of our company the last 2 weeks. It's been 12 to 14-hour days, 7 days a week, trying to get answers to people about what should we do? How do we stay viable? How do we lay people off? What do we have to give them? What's the difference between a layoff and a furlough? Should we put them on COBRA or try to continue benefits, or hi, cutie, and all that type of thing. And then the new COVID phase 2 bill passed on late Wednesday night, and yesterday's questions were all about sort of dissecting the COVID bill and what that means for employers as well. So that was a big change. It is, I will tell you briefly, the major expansion, and we don't know all the answers yet. This is effective April 2nd. April 2nd, employers of all sizes below 500. So 1 employee to 500 have to offer 10 more days of paid sick leave, effective immediately, not accrued, dropped in the time bank like a bucket. To employees who are quarantined or isolated from COVID, sick from COVID, taking care of someone who is isolated or sick from COVID, or new bullet that's going to affect most of our clients, staying home with a child whose school has been closed down. So 10 extra sick days paid by the employer. There is a tax pool of money to get reimbursed by that, but no one's figured out how to use it yet. So there's probably going to be some upfront cost while you outlay those extra days that people are going to probably want to take advantage of now. We'll figure out the tax stuff on the back end. That said, something could come out in the next 10 days of how to take advantage of that. Maybe it comes right out of payroll taxes and the payroll that you're in the immediate payroll period of. We don't know yet. So I'm telling you what I know. The other big one that's going to blow everybody right off their seats is the expansion of the Family Medical Leave Act. Prior to Wednesday night, or Prior to April 2nd, family medical leave only applied to employers with 50 or more employees. This is now applying to all employers under 500. You have to offer 3 months of paid leave, paid at 2/3 time, after a 10-day waiting period, which will be covered by their new sick leave, to stay home with school-age kids whose school will close down. Again, the government's saying that they're going to reimburse that through taxes, tax credits. There's maximums on both of these things, but the operative thing is we haven't figured out how any of that's going to work yet, but you are now obligated to give all employees 3 months off at 2/3 pay to stay home with their kids, starting April 2nd.
That has to be scary, particularly if you've had to shut down your entire business in the last week, right? And
Super scary. That's why I'm saying don't use words like furlough that can confuse things. Lay people off. And when we're able to call people back, we will. But the word furlough, A, implies a firm return date, which I don't think anybody has at this point. We don't know when this is going to end. So let's stop saying furlough where we're confusing the issue. There's a carve out that has no definition yet, that if the providing all this creates an instability or unviability in the business, you maybe accept it out of it. But all of our attorneys are saying, do not even try that unless you talk to an attorney, because we've got to really prove undue hardship to be exempted. The labor commissioner can step in and give us some relief on this if we're under 50 employees, but we haven't heard anything yet. So right now, this is what it is.
Art, in what you're hearing, and this is probably to all of you, but from what you're hearing, is there, California is kind of an outlier, is because we do take things very responsibly, and we have people from other states as well that are on this and will hear this. But in this particular effort that we're talking about now, are we seeing this being communicated at all levels, at state, local, county, municipal, to work through? Because obviously, like in San Francisco, we have so many things that you have to pay for employees. Is this, are they trying to umbrella all this so it's not one on top of the other, but more a coordinated effort?
No, it's piecemeal. San Francisco is doing its own thing, which San Francisco has expanded its sick leave law as well. As of March 9th, San Francisco employers have to pay out sick leave. If they're laying people off, if work ceases for any reason due to the isolation or whatever, right? So that's an expansion. There's another program through San Francisco that's optional that gives people another 5 days, an extra 5 days of sick leave. It's reimbursed at minimum wage through the city, but again, that's like the applications aren't even available for that yet. So since it's optional, we're opting out. All of our clients are opting out. We don't want to do anything more. But no, to your question, everything's piecemeal. All the information I'm getting is like, because I'm up at 2 a.m. reading the language of the bill that's in Congress, and then trying to figure it all out, waiting for attorneys to distill it down for me, popping in and out of the OLSC's website in the city to make sure that nothing's changed on a daily basis. It's pretty awful. Like they need.
And what about all of the freelancers?
Efforts, what?
What about the freelancers, the gig, all of us that work, contract work and don't have regular streams of, tax, well, we pay our taxes, we file taxes, right? But we, where do we fit in any of this? And what happens? Like, what is that even part of the consideration? Because we certainly had a different type of economy in the last 10 years than we did in the past.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because it brings up a bigger answer. With AB 5 and the Borello case from last year and dynamics, it's really hard to legally be an independent contractor anymore. And I think that part of the reason that, the number one reason that the government's making that so is because they want their pound of flesh in payroll taxes. The second part is the part that's advertised and publicized by the government more is we want to protect you. So if you were an employee right now, you would have all these protections. You could file for state disability insurance. You could file for paid family leave. You could file for unemployment insurance. So we're trying to protect you. I mean, the underlying reason is they want their pound of flesh. I'm a cynic. But, you know, they're losing $7 billion a year in payroll taxes. So B, with a billion with a B. So there aren't that many protections, Merril. You have to self-insure on SDI, on disability insurance. There's no unemployment insurance unless you're actually paying into that somehow. And it's tricky. But in the third phase of the relief bill, which is being written now, you know, there may be some carve outs for individuals, some cash handouts and things like that. And that would apply.
Fantastic. Heidi, do you have anything about how taking this in is best ways for us to digest it and then communicate it back out?
Well, yes, I do. I think that, again, as I said in the very opener that I shared, one has to be really careful in how you communicate with anyone and everyone. So I think this discussion, for instance, about the freelance world is very interesting because especially in the California, in the Bay Area, you know, the gig work economy is very prevalent. And I know that there are a lot of white collar professionals who work in this economy. So how they communicate to their clients about their needs is important because, again, we have to continue to build community as people continue to say on the media every day, we're in this together. So communicating, how can I help you? How can you help me? Not quid pro quo, but finding ways to share common support. For instance, let's think about a company that has 3D capability, 3D printing capability. How can they communicate out to their community, a regional community, that they might be willing or able to help local government create materials that they might need? I think that those are ways that continue to build a team or continue to keep everyone engaged, because I think right now it's going to be hard for those who are not used to being at home every day, which is the lion's share of people who work. And
so a question that I have is that for many of us in the food industry, we are considered essential businesses. And we're trying to anticipate what the demand is going to look like in 4 to 6 weeks so that we can be staffing appropriately. Either Julie or Kelly, or actually anyone on the call, do you have any suggestions for what businesses could be doing now to make sure for continuity planning that they are able to meet those demands in 4 to 6 weeks as we're able to be more active in the public areas and as different programs start to open up again?
This is Kelly. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Cool. So in addition to seeking finance, right, some working capital to get through these next few months, really what it boils down to is the ability for restaurants to cater to these needs, right? People staying indoors. And I apologize if I don't know exactly what the steps are in order to set up being on, I don't know what all the different apps are as far as delivery options and stuff like that. But that's definitely something that you guys want to look into. A lot of people are ordering in, as you guys already probably know. That's not new information. Another thing is potentially catering to the businesses that are still in business and offering them those services for a catering. Again, this is kind of me just thinking off the cuff. If I was in the restaurant business, you walk in, if it's even open, and it's pretty much a graveyard. So again, maybe trying to focus on delivering your services as far as catering options, and going to the clients directly?
On our side, and most of you don't know me except for Marilyn, I'm usually a cheerleader, and I was one of the ones a couple weeks ago that was like, everybody relax, it's just a flu. And I have become really pessimistic in the last couple weeks, maybe because we've laid off thousands of employees. Like, we've by hand laid off thousands of employees for our clients. I don't think this is going to be a 2 or 3 week thing. I don't think it's going to be a 2 or 3 month thing. I think this is going to be the start of a recession. And I'm operating under that. I hope I'm wrong. I want to be wrong. Trust me. I don't think I am. When I think about what happened with 9/11, it was a one-day thing that sent us into a 2-year recession. This is going to be months of isolation, limited business, limited contact, people unemployed. I think this is the tip of the iceberg. And so we're telling our clients who really want us to be like, are calling us and saying, well, this is only for the next 3 weeks. I'm like, it's not. How are you going to stay viable for the next 6 months? If nothing changes for 6 months, how are you staying viable? What's your pivot? Salon clients, maybe the pivot for them is we start offering hand treatments because everyone's washing so much, we're ruining our hands, right? Some people care about that, some don't. What's the pivot? For us, we're obviously, we don't need to pivot right now. All we're doing is helping people lay people off. And we were doing a ton of recruiting a couple weeks ago, but the pivot is helping people work from home, interpreting these laws. One of our catering clients is doing a pivot because they have no business because all the events are canceled. They're creating lunch and dinner menus that you can choose from and have delivered right to your door. So there'll be some online app, you pick your meal and they'll bring it to you. I don't know if it'll work. I don't know if it won't work. Our cannabis dispensary clients who aren't delivering are going to start delivery services. But it's about the pivot. I don't think this is about 2 or 3 weeks. I think it's about the start of a recession, and let's think about how we can shore up. I mean, we've lived large for a while now. I know I have. Our business has. All we've seen is up. We've just gone up, 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 up. So I think a lot of people have maybe not been as disciplined about budgeting and spending and things like that. So we're asking clients to think about multiple avenues. There's layoffs, reducing hours, changing exempts to hourly and making some of them part-time or paying them just for the time they work, pay cuts, employing multiple options across their business to stay viable.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I know, Brian, if you're going to have to pop off, so if there's anything you want to just say in closing, and just note that this is our first discussion, but the next ones that we'll be adding on over the next few weeks are really going to talk about how to pivot and how to, how to adjust as we have to work from home, right? Getting better equipped at, getting people onto the call. That's a, simple little things too. Again, week 2 and 3, how is it when you're got your child at home all day and your spouse or your significant other and waving to your neighbors across the street? So I think that, we're going to get much more innovative. I know that Rhiannon and I have already been talking about this. For the next couple of weeks, it's going to be about the future states of working at home, but then it's going to start really being educational programs, re-upping your certifications. We're still going to have sexual harassment training. We're still going to have food safety trainings. Like ours is, obviously in manufacturing. So we're going to be working, David and I have been in a number of conversations around this, like, how do we get this content? And I think that we're all going to, and I know my other groups were talking about this as well. So let's plan on that. But Brian, did you have anything before you had to jump off? If you're still here. You might have gone.
You might be muted.
But yeah, so Julie, that was so such a good way to think about that. And I'd love, because we're getting close up on 11, for Heidi and Kelly to also chime in with a couple thoughts. And then I know, Rhiannon, you might have had 1 or 2 things that we didn't cover in you know, in your question around some of these essential food and beverage facilities and what can and can be done, and also in cultivation too, because I think, you know, we're going to send this recording out, and we want to make sure people understand that there's really good information for a variety of industries.
So what I want to just say is that it is all about the pivot, and, you know, this came on a little faster than a lot of people thought it would, but, you know, this kind of underlines that importance of having that business continuity plan, understanding where your potential directions you can pivot to are. So, you know, whether you already know what your business continuity plan is or whether you need to take this time, you know, let's start with assessing our resources and look at how do we use those resources right now, and what different ways could we use those resources. And those resources are everything from our personnel and our employees, but also our equipment. It's also our knowledge. It's also our expertise. So one of the things that I would really want people to understand is that, you know, the restaurants are kind of the end of restaurants and grocery stores are at the end of our supply chain. We also have to think about the beginning of our supply chain, and the growers and the farmers and the primary processors who are actually out there, you know, still working and manufacturing our food. So, you know, making sure that if we are one of those supply chain partners, to make sure that we're protecting our workforce. So at this time, it's understood that the COVID virus is not a foodborne virus, so it cannot be transmitted on food. However, it can be transmitted on surfaces. So it's really important that if you are still operating because you're at the beginning of that supply chain, to really emphasize proper hand washing with your employees on a very increased basis. I would even recommend weekly or more frequently, and really emphasize it for your warehouse staff and your receiving and shipping staff, because now they're, you know, in the past, they would be our low contact workers. They don't contact finished product. They don't contact open ingredients. And so, you know, they probably don't have the same hand hygiene and glove hygiene front of mind thinking. But now they are the front lines. They are touching things that have been outside of your facility. They are interacting with every load. So I would really encourage those folks to have access to frequent glove changes, frequent hand sanitizer, frequent breaks for proper full hand washing. Because what we're seeing is that the asymptomatic carriers are still infecting other people. So, you know, that segment of our workforce is pretty young and healthy. So if they got exposed, they would probably be asymptomatic, but they are still going to take that home and, you know, expose their families and their tight-knit communities. And so we really need to emphasize for workforce safety that really the best thing we can do is proper hand washing and observing proper distancing. So even things like staggering break times so that no more than 10 or 15 people are on break at a time. And yes, this is a supervisory, you know, dilemma. How do we keep the lines moving, but also staggering break times? But this is going to be really important to keep that front end of the supply chain active and functional, so that we will be able to have these delivery food businesses, and we will be able to have us all safely sheltering at home, but still have a continued supply chain.
Heidi, any last words?
Yes, absolutely. I would recommend that people consider using this downtime to create their crisis plans for how they're going to communicate if there is something that it directly impacts their business. Riffing off of what Rhiannon said is that, you know, what if you do have a food supply chain that does get, infected? Obviously not the food, but if that your team gets infected or whatever it is, you need to have a clear understanding of what you're going to say and who's going to say it and when you're going to say it. Additionally, from a communications perspective, I recommend everyone think about what your next plan will be over the next 3 to 4 to 5 months, of how you're going to talk to your constituents and how you're going to talk to your own teams and your employees. Think of it in a way of maybe making a lesson plan. You know, where are we going to go over the next few months of staying together and staying in sync? Communications can go a long way. Don't be obsequious. Be very supportive and give factual information. Furthermore, verify that the factual information you're sharing is indeed factual. So there's a lot of misinformation that's circulating, so fact check everything before you share that. And, you know, remember that we need each other to push business forward. So use that premise to move forward and talk to your world.
Thank you. That's great. Kelly?
Yeah, I'll just end on this, Merril. You know, when it comes to the public health department, the Department of Health has actually deemed dispensaries to stay open as vital because they provide medicinal use. So with that said, business, I know San Francisco, New York, and a couple other areas have deemed dispensaries to stay open. And when it comes to cultivation and anything else cannabis related, really just reach out to your lenders to stay, you know, up to date as far as what the lending parameters are. If you walk into a bank, you're not going to get that information. And all businesses, right? Lenders, it's our job to provide that type of, like Rhiannon was mentioning, resources. Use your resources. Use us as a resource. That's pretty much it.
I concur with that.
And Julie?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much summed up, but I guess I would encourage all of you, I mean, if you've got questions, your clients have got questions about what they can do with their employees, what, you know, how to interpret this latest bill and what I mean, we've been trying to push, the more people hoard, the more we want to share. And we want to be the change we want to see in the world right now. And we are trying our best to model it. We're giving out for free information we would typically charge for. And we're inviting all of you, if you're not on our constant contact blast list, get on it, or Merril can push to you from us. But share freely the information that we're giving, because we really want to be helpful to small businesses at this time.
Yes, and what we will do is we'll send this recording out. We'll send, if it's okay with our advisors here, you know, your contact information will be included in that, and you know, some of the more takeaways, when Rhiannon and I listen to this later, you know, we'll definitely pull some of the jewels out of this and make sure that those are front and center, and that we can all continue to share this. And as I said, you know, we'll push out more meetups like this over the next couple of weeks, and then we'll start our educational series around that all of us ideally can participate. I know that so many people are starting to do that, and you know, ideally we can start consolidating some of those platforms so that we don't inundate people with what am I doing today? It's all at 1 o'clock on Friday, right? So that we we can all do more focused programs. And you know, I have to say, David is a guest on this call right now, but he and I have had some conversations, and he's really good about saying, what's exactly the focus here? We have all these ideas, what are we actually focusing on? And I think that that's, you know, it's also overwhelming right now, and that we have to working, you know, this was a great introduction, and I just think that it's the start, and then as we topic specific for people to get information, and sharing resources and being in this together is the future of how we're going to get through this. And thank you all for being part of this conversation and future ones as well.
Thanks for organizing.
All right, well, I'll talk soon.
Everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Merril.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Nice to meet you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.